Ocean covers almost a third of the Earth's surface. Two large islands lie in the southwestern Pacific, their climate and culture shaped by their location on this huge sea. New Zealand. Another name for it is the land of the long white cloud, and it is surely a place to inspire poetry. It is one of the last uncrowded places on Earth. There are fewer than 4 million people living in New Zealand, in an area about equal to the state of Colorado. This is the home of the Johnstons. Milk is delivered right to their door. Margarita Johnston takes it in for the family's breakfast. Her mother's name is Moana. Her little sister is called Pipiama. Margarita's father, Joe, and her younger sister, Joanna. The Johnstons are Maoris. Maoris were the first inhabitants of New Zealand.
When you finish your test, you better be off to school.
Now be careful and watch out for the traffic.
Bye-bye.
It's a short ride for Margarita to her school. Paraparaumu is a Maori name which means place of the earth ovens. High schools are called colleges in New Zealand. Education is very important to New Zealanders. Most of their schools are pleasant and modern. All students must wear school uniforms.
Good morning. Sit down.
Margarita is in the 4th form, the same as the 9th grade in the United States.
Having a look this time at the outline of New Zealand, and I want you to go...
About 1,200 miles, 2,000 kilometers from Australia, New Zealand is made up of 2 islands, the North Island and the South Island. Much of their area is mountainous. The islands extend about 1,000 miles, 1,600 kilometers, from north to south. The highest mountains are in the South Island. They are called the Southern Alps. From these mountains, many rivers flow swiftly to the sea, which is never more than 60 miles, about 100 kilometers, away. There are also stretches of fertile plains with abundant rainfall. There are even some areas of desert. There are many hot springs and pools of boiling mud. In the central part of the North Island, many geysers spurt from the earth. They are evidence that New Zealand is situated in a volcanically active part of the world. New Zealand was the last area on Earth to be colonized by humans. They came across thousands of miles of uncharted ocean in large sailing canoes. It was a good place. They called the place Aotearoa, which means the land of the long white cloud. Then, about 300 years ago, the first Europeans happened onto the islands. Soon after, missionaries and traders began to arrive. To distinguish themselves from the white men, the Polynesian settlers began calling themselves Maoris, which means normal. At first, the two races got along well. Maori hospitality was, and is, legendary. Even if they found their tattoos a little strange, most Europeans admired the Maoris as a handsome and proud race. In the mid-1800s, more and more British immigrants arrived, lured by the promise of cheap land. The land belonged to the Maoris, but by fraud and sharp practices, many of them were persuaded to sell. The Maoris saw their birthright vanishing. In the 1860s, the enraged Maoris fought back. They fought bravely, but they were no match for the British troops. Gradually, peace came. the land remaining in Maori hands continued to dwindle. The discovery of gold in the 1870s accelerated European immigration. During the 1890s, the government embarked on a far-reaching program of social welfare legislation. Pensions for the elderly and the 8-hour day for workers became law. New Zealand was the first country in the world to give women the vote. New Zealand's national bird is the kiwi. New Zealanders are frequently called Kiwis. Kiwi birds can't fly and only come out at night. Most New Zealanders have never seen one, except in a zoo. The islands are rich in bird life, some 250 species in all. However, 2 species of bats are the only mammals native to New Zealand. Before the Europeans came, there were great forests of stately kauri trees. Now they have all but vanished, cut down for timber or burned to clear the land for farming. Just as in this recent burn, grass springs through the ashes. Sunlight and abundant rainfall cause grass to grow faster and richer in New Zealand than anywhere else on Earth. Grass is the key to New Zealand's economy. It feeds over 70 million sheep, about 17 sheep for every human. Dogs are very useful for moving flocks of sheep. With these champion sheepdogs, one man easily drives a flock of 500 sheep to new pasture. The rich grass also feeds cattle, about 9 million of them. Deer are raised on farms for their meat. Some of the land burned and cleared by the early settlers for farms is now planted with trees again. They grow fast. In 30 years, they will be ready to cut for lumber. Almost anything grows well in New Zealand. Introduced from the Chinese mainland, the Chinese gooseberry has been renamed Kiwifruit in honor of its new home. New Zealand is a primary producer. This means that its economy depends on products derived from the land. Cows convert the rich grass into milk, which in turn is made into butter, cheese, powdered milk, and other dairy products. Sheep provide wool and sheepskin. Lamb and mutton are important products. New Zealand is also a leading producer of beef. All these products are exported for sale throughout the world. The money earned from these export sales allows New Zealanders to import. That is, to buy cars, machinery, and other goods that they need instead of manufacturing them at home. New Zealand's economy depends on this trade with other countries far across the sea. Despite the fact that most of the nation's wealth comes from the land, 75% of all New Zealanders live in cities. Christchurch, the largest city on the South Island, looks more English than England. Auckland in the north is a bright and bustling center of trade and industry. It is difficult to find a slum anywhere in New Zealand. Wellington, the nation's capital, is situated on a magnificent harbor. new parliamentary office tower in Wellington is called the Beehive. New Zealand's government takes care of its people virtually from the cradle to the grave. Schools and universities are free. Diane Crispin is a nurse for the government's extramural hospital service. She cares for seriously ill people in their homes so that they don't have to stay in a hospital. There's even an ombudsman. A citizen with a complaint against the government can address it to the ombudsman. He then makes an independent investigation and tries to resolve the complaint. And there are complaints. In order to pay for all these government services, taxes are high. Some say there's too much government regulation. Many young people leave New Zealand to seek their fortunes in other parts of the world. New Zealand is working to promote the kinds of industries that will keep its bright young people in the country, such as this computer software company in Christchurch. New Zealand is far away from the rest of the world, but it is not isolated from today's problems. A great many New Zealanders are opposed to nuclear weapons and to racial prejudice in any form. Here they are demonstrating against the government of South Africa's racial policy of apartheid. In New Zealand, racial discrimination is outlawed. Its own racial minority, the Maoris, in general are well integrated. Zach Temaro has a good job as a locomotive driver. Joe Johnston works in a furniture factory. Moana Johnston works in a home for the elderly. For a time it was thought that Maori culture was dying, doomed to be absorbed into the dominant white culture. Today, however, there is a growing pride in Maori culture. The ancient art of wood carving is revived at the Maori Arts and Crafts Institute. Children are taught the Maori language at nursery schools called Kohana Reos. New Zealand is a land where two peoples are working together to blend the Maori and European ways of life. Families like the Johnstons seem to be able to keep a foot comfortably in both cultures. In their backyard, Joe and his cousin Lester prepare a barbecue in the ancient Maori manner. It is called a hangi. Rocks are heated until they are red hot and placed in a pit. Then comes the food, meat and vegetables, which is then wrapped in wet cloths and covered with earth. Meanwhile, Margarita gathers wild watercress for the salad. In the afternoon, the hangi is opened. Margarita's aunt sings a blessing before everyone digs in. Indeed, there's much that every New Zealander could be thankful for. It's a place where people have worked hard and made a good life. And it's a place where they can enjoy that life. The meadows and the waters echo a love song to this lovely land, drifting alone in the great ocean. Truly, the land of the long white cloud.